There are 11 functioning synagogues in Tehran. There are kosher shops. There's a Jewish library. There's a Jewish hospital. There's a guaranteed participation in the masjids, the parliament, by the Jewish community, as there is for the Christians and the Zoroastrians, not for the Baha'is. Baha'is don't enjoy religious freedom in Iran. And there's particular reasons for that I don't agree with and don't justify, but it's not just that they don't like Baha'is. But the Jewish community is a respected and long-established part of Iranian society. Did Ahmadinejad deny the Holocaust? That was a little harder. I spent about an afternoon researching a lot of different quotes, and most of them were something like, by Ahmadinejad, something like, if the Holocaust happened, then, and people would say, see, he's questioning the Holocaust. He said if. And of course, the first time he said that, and there was such a reaction in the West, he wasn't necessarily depressed over that. He's a politician. And he got support in the Arab world. And of course, Iran is not primarily Arab. It's primarily Persian. Multinational, but primarily Persian. And, he was seen as ticking off the United States. It was a good thing. It's probably been the most problematical thing about the entire situation between the U.S. and Iran, that the question of the Holocaust has been denied. Because in the West, the Holocaust is the disaster in human history. And I'm particularly sensitive to this because I believe my father's side of the family was Jewish, and that we lost people in the Holocaust. I don't know, because he was over here and his father was over here, and the village that his grandfather grew up was destroyed. It no longer exists, which is why we think it was there. But the old family name is Lapin, not Wilayto. And that's because back in the 1880s, one of my great-great-great-grandfathers was murdered by a mob, and his wife married a guy named Wilayto. And we think what happened was he was killed in a Tsarist pogrom, and his wife remarried a Gentile to protect the children. I can't prove it, so I don't put it in writing. But I think that's what happened. And it makes me think, the Holocaust, it was one of the worst atrocities ever committed in the world. Of course, it wasn't 6 million Jews alone. It was 6 million Jews and 5 million communists, trade unionists, gays, Romas, gypsies, Eastern Europeans, people with mental disabilities, and so on. But of course, saying there were 11 million killed, 6 of them who were Jews, is not as good in a propaganda technique to develop support for Israel as if you just said 11 million people were killed and 6 million were Jews. It's better to reduce it just to 6 million Jews, which is something I never quite understood until I thought about it in relation to the Middle East. What Ahmadinejad is saying is, and this came out in an interview again with Amy Goodman and Juan Gonzalez, the Holocaust was a European phenomenon. European Gentiles killed European Jews in Europe. How does that justify European Jews coming to the Middle East and taking the land that was stolen from the Palestinians? How is that justified? And why do you keep asking me about it? I had nothing to do with it. This is what he says. So, does it show some insensitivity? Yeah, I think it does. But does it mean he's denying the Holocaust? No, not if you read the interview with Amy Goodman. What he's saying is that if it happened like you said it happened, and you won't let us talk about it, you won't let us examine it, you won't let us look into the history of it, that's provoking, then it's your problem, not ours. So a lot of us wish he would just come right out and say, the Holocaust happened, it was one of the worst things that had happened in the world, and it's, and we had nothing to do with it, and we're sorry. So some of those Jews who were escaping the Holocaust wound up in Iran. Some of their descendants live there today. So, I'm trying to counter the arguments that Iran is dangerous to the world, that it's trying to develop a nuclear weapon, that the president denied the Holocaust, that the president called for the destruction of Israel. What about terrorism? Does Iran support terrorism? Well, as I explained in the book, I grew up in Massachusetts. My folks used to bring us around to all the historical sites from the Revolutionary War. And we go to Concord, where the shot heard round the world was. And actually, that was Lexington. I always get those mixed up. They had the shot heard round the world. That's because Paul Revere said the British were coming, and he came at night, and everybody came out, all the Minutemen came out, and the British didn't come till the morning, so they spent the night in the pub drinking flips, which is rum and you get a hot poker and butter. By the time the morning came, no one knew who fired the shot heard around the world. But then the British went to Concord, and as they had there, and as they marched back to Boston with their red coats in formation, the farmers, who were known as the Minutemen because they could get ready in a minute, they came out and shot at the British retreating from behind boulders and rocks and trees, and the British said, "That's not fair. You can't fight like that. You're supposed to stand out in the middle of the field so we can shoot you down." So they were called terrorists. They were called terrorists. So, I mean, I support the struggle of the Palestinian people for self-determination. A peaceful resolution to the problems between Israelis and Palestinians. But if the Israelis insist on carpet bombing Gaza, on arresting Palestinian children, on torture and murder and disappearances, I support the right of the Palestinian people to take up arms and to defend their community. If Iran supports Hamas, which by the way is Sunni, not Shia, and supports Hezbollah for similar reasons in Lebanon as a resistance force against Israeli aggression, I think they not only have the right to do that, they should be applauded for doing that. That is not Now, on the other hand, Al-Qaeda just issued a statement the other day calling for Iran to release the brother of Osama bin Laden. They claim that they're holding some dozens of his family members. See, Iran says nothing about that. Iran tried to get rid of the Taliban in Afghanistan before the U.S. did, and was congratulated by the U.S. for their help in helping to set up a post-Taliban government in Iran, donated more money to that effort than an international conference held in Japan than any other country in the world. No ties with Al-Qaeda, no ties with the Taliban, targeted by those countries actually, but by those movements. But yet it is called a terrorist organization. And now there's only one official military in the world that has been characterized as a terrorist organization, and that's the Revolutionary Guards. See, the only one. Iran is the biggest problem in the world right now, isn't it? Isn't that what we're told? It's the most dangerous, it's the biggest threat to the United States. You know, is that really true? I thought it was hunger. I thought it was poverty. You know, when the earthquake happened in Port-au-Prince in Haiti, President Obama sent down $100 million for relief, and about $300 million to back the military efforts to move in case the Haitian government crumbled and the popular forces began to come to power. $100 million. How much is that? That's what it cost to run the Iraq War for 5 hours. Wow. That's 0.1% of the bonuses that Goldman Sachs gave its top executives last year. Yeah. $100 million. See, we have a war in this world. We have a war against ignorance, against poverty, against prejudice and discrimination and racism and sexism and homophobia. That's the war we ought to be fighting. The Western powers can't win a war against anger. They can kill somebody, but all they do is create 10 or 15 more angry people. There's no solution that way. No one in this room is safe. It's safer because of what the Western